Talk about COP30, if we must. I believe it's grinding to a halt. God knows what it's all been about. 56,000 delegates flew in from all over the world into the Brazilian jungle, the rainforest, where they had sliced down, felled down, cut down thousands of acres of forest, rainforest, in order to build a 4-lane highway from nearby Belém all the way to the delegates' conference hall, which caught fire towards the end of the week last week. That notwithstanding, 56,000. What kind of conclusion did all these people reach? By the way, Britain sent 450 delegates. It's grotesque, isn't it? Cost us about 5 million quid. They spewed untold carbon emissions into the air, flying in by planet-destroying jets, including our delegation, of course, included crazy Ed Miliband, the Nut Zero secretary, and, of course, never here Keir Starmer, who never misses the chance to climb on a plane. Ed Miliband went there twice. Never mind the planet. You know, I've got a conference to attend. Look, then they came to the end and they made no resolution about the use of fossil fuels. I mean, that's fine by me. Good. But surely after this huge juggernaut of an event, they ought to have come to some kind of conclusion. They didn't. They came to no real conclusion at all. What was it all about? Let's talk to social and political commentator and expert on matters of the environment, James Melville. Hi, James.
Good evening, Kevin. You well?
I'm okay, mate. The EU delegation warned the president of Brazil that they would not accept any deal that in any way refused to call for a roadmap to phase out fossil fuels. No way. They just, no, we were not signing any deal like that unless you have a roadmap to phase out fossil fuels. We from Europe, Britain, the lads, we just will not sign anything. Then they did sign it. The big watered-down pledge to do nothing much at all. No. I mean, as I say, it's fine by me they don't want to reduce fossil fuels, but I thought that was the point. 56,000 people there, 450 Brits. What was it all for?
It's just a great big jamboree of virtue hypocrisy. You know, it has been for years. You know, it's an opportunity for, you know, certain individuals to go across there, private jets, 5-star hotels, and tell the world about how virtuous they are. Meanwhile, us plebs have to pay extra tax on net zero lunacy, which is actually helping to bankrupt the country. But many countries are actually walking away from this, but Britain, of course, are doing the complete opposite because of net Miliband. And so you end up in a situation whereby nothing is achieved at great cost, and also dollop upon dollop of hypocrisy. I mean, over 100,000 trees were felled for this VIP lane,
which hilarious.
Which isn't going to be to the benefit of the indigenous communities in the Amazon. A lot of farmers, I've seen their landscapes hollowed out, and that VIP 4-lane highway isn't even going to be used afterwards. But that's fine, because the great and good could get a quick access in a VIP lane to COP. Now, COP's got history with this as well. I remember a few years ago, one of the sponsors was Coca-Cola. The world's biggest polluter of plastic bottles, Coca-Cola. How virtuous. And you have your motorcades as well, and the great gargantuan cost. And we have, again, the likes of Ed Miliband and Keir Starmer, who are quite partial to getting on a private jet and staying in a nice hotel and telling the world about just how virtuous they are and how Britain's leading the way. Well, maybe they should look closer to home. This country is rotting on many different levels, normally wrapped around the cost of living crisis, and of which net zero is a significant part of that. I remember when Starmer and Miliband said that we're going to have £300 off our energy bills. It isn't quite working out like that.
Going in the opposite direction, isn't it? It's going in the opposite. Yeah. Just to go back to exactly what happened there, as I say, the EU, including Britain, were pushing for a deal that would call for a roadmap to phase out fossil fuels. I mean, not exactly hard and fast stuff in the first place, but in the end, no words appeared to that effect, and all the resolution at the end of this nonsense called for was for countries to, and I quote, voluntarily accelerate their climate action, and it recalls the consensus reached at the COP28 conference in Dubai. Great. So in 2 years they've achieved nothing. EU Climate Commissioner Wopke Hoekstra said, we're not going to hide the fact that we would have preferred to have more ambition on everything. We should support it though, because at least it's going in the right direction. I mean, God, what a load of money, a load of damage to the environment, as you say. All these 56,000 people flying into Brazil, killing the planet with all the jets they came in on, many of them private, many of them going first class. Ed Miliband flew in, flew out and flew back. He went there twice. Unbelievable. I mean, we've got what can we not somehow, James, just prevail upon all the people who organise these farces to stop doing it, stop insulting our intelligence. It's a disgrace. It's a scandal.
Yeah, I think the narrative's changed. The Overton window has changed in a number of things over the last few months, largely because the Labour government and their direction of travel are pushing people in the exact opposite. And I think net zero is one of these things, especially at a time where there's a cost of living crisis that's going on, and some of it has been heightened by the Labour government, and obviously the budget, there's going to be more to that as well. So you've got a cost of living crisis on the price of things, the essentials like food and energy, and at the same time you've got a record tax burden. So the public are dealing with this on a day-to-day basis, and meanwhile they see their leaders grandstanding around the world at these jamboree virtue signalling summits at great cost and staying in lavish hotels and fine dining and private jets. Nothing's achieved, and all it does is actually destroy some of the Amazon, and people are just going, this sums up the Labour government and a lot of our politicians around the world at this moment. They're telling us plebs to know our place regarding climate. And actually, we're at a stage now where if anyone thinks that we should have extra carbon taxes, and whether that is somehow going to change the planet and change the climate, well, they should have a word with themselves. But we've unfortunately got Ed Miliband, who's so lost down the rabbit hole of his own virtue in this. He's burrowed so deep on this one, but part of that is that he's stubborn, like Starmer. So he's gone down this route and he wants to justify an ends to means. But unfortunately, all we've got is a government who are pointing completely in the wrong direction on things that the public don't want at enormous cost. Net zero, roughly, is costing about £30 billion a year, and there's carbon capture machines and so on. I would suggest the money is spent on the things that we need the most, fixing our infrastructures, proper infrastructures in this country, and doing what they said they should do, fix the foundations. Remember that?
Yeah, fixing the foundations, yeah. Starmer's favourite phrase. Now, just to sum up, James, going to have to go now. Good to have you on board as always. This COP30 conference achieved the square root of sod all, didn't it? Nothing.
Well, absolutely. I mean, but the same with every COP. They promised to change the world. It's just ludicrous. I mean, there's so many different debates on this, and I've touched on a number of them. I think even some of the climate debates in terms of what's causing it are up for grabs in terms of the disingenuous messaging. Like, for instance, the methane myth argument. I could wang on about that for hours, but I won't. So there's a debate to be had about that, and there's also a debate to be had about the so-called solutions. It reminds me a lot of the COVID era as well, whereby governments were seen to do the right thing, but actually they did the wrong thing and made the situation even worse. And we're at this point with net zero, and I've said this before, I don't think the public buy it. I think we're fed up with it, especially at a critical time in terms of the economy. There should be a referendum on net zero.
I agree with you, and I think a referendum on net zero, and I think we should end the international annual farce of the COPs, the not much COPs. It's just ridiculous. As I say, it insults our intelligence. Folks, let me know what you think, but after, what was it, 3 weeks? These people in the jungle achieved nothing. Let's talk to Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum, Philip Kisley. There you go, Philip. Solitary confinement, a punishment for terrible prisoners, extremists, Islamists, murderers, radicals. people trying to radicalise other prisoners. They're put into solitary confinement. They go to the High Court and the judge agrees with them. This is wrong because it's leaving you depressed and anxious and traumatised. Isn't that what it's supposed to do?
I think it is. It is supposed to be a punishment, and this is our old friend, the European Convention of Human Rights again, isn't it? Wreaking havoc and just making a mockery of all our homegrown rules and regulations. So these people are homicidal maniacs, the real scum of the earth. You know, they want to nail bomb and kill people, and they feel depressed and anxious. You know, oh dear, what a shame. Never mind. You know, who cares? I mean, I don't care. I couldn't give a monkey's toss about their human rights. I don't even want them in British prisons. I think they should be deported. They're Islamists. And don't ask me where, because I don't care. I believe Gaza's pretty nice this time of year, you know. So I think that we're in this situation once again, and we always are on so many of these things, where it's always the perpetrators that get the sympathy. It's never the victims. Is anybody thinking about, you know, Lee Rigby's family here, for example, because his name has come up. And it's just one of those things, like I say, that is just so appalling and really sums up our joke of a country and our joke of an establishment and our joke of a government.
They're citing Article 8 of the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, which is the right to a family life.
Yeah.
I mean, presumably they're expanding that to a right to some kind of social life, because they don't have much of a family life behind bars, do they? But this is what happens in this country. As soon as, you know, kind of low-lifes go to the court, to our High Court, and say the magic initials, ECHR, our judges always buckle, don't they? And this is a ruling against the right of prison governors, if you like, to put prisoners into solitary confinement, that age-old punishment for prisoners who refuse to toe the line. This is about discipline behind bars. If prison governors can't have recourse to solitary confinement, it's going to make prisons even more unruly than they already are. This is madness.
Well, one of them, the reason he's not in solitary confinement now is because he punched a prison officer in the face. Okay, and that was seen as evidence of his depression and anxiety. So he's been rewarded for that, but it's not the only thing. This is costing the taxpayer over £500,000, and actually it's going to come in much more than that. We are paying for this nonsense, this back and forth about, you know, you're in prison, you're a terrorist, you're an Islamist terrorist. One of these lunatics had been walking around with an 18-inch sword and dressed in armor before he was put away. You know, these are the craziest people in society, and I think, you know, what they've done, the awful crimes they've committed, we should not be interested in their human rights beyond, you know, they're in prison, we feed them, we give them an element of you know, what prisoners would expect, and that's it, nothing more. There is, you know, there are no kind of frills here. This is just ridiculous. But the point is, I come back to this key point, it's costing us a fortune. It costs us a fortune to keep them anyway, and they are Islamists, remember, and we shouldn't be spending that money on them. It's almost like our establishment is, I keep thinking about, you know, when rats get this crazy disease, toxoplasmosis, where they're attracted to rats, they're attracted to cats, they're attracted to the smell of feline urine, and it's a mind virus they have. This is what we have as a society. We have a mind virus where we're attracted to the most toxic, dangerous people who want to kill us, and we want to protect them and we want to love them. We've got to stop stop it, if we're going to get beyond Islamism, if we're going to sort out all of these big issues that we have as a society, then we need to change our mindset and actually think about punishment and justice, because there is no justice for the people who've been harmed, killed, mutilated and murdered when they see this nonsense happening and being played out across the media.
As you say, this trio who used the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, to argue their case, they cost us, the British taxpayer, because of their legal bid, their successful legal action, they cost us £500,000, £500,000, in order to not have to go into solitary confinement. And in essence, this judge essentially said that his name was Mr. Justice Ellenbogen. Mrs. Justice Ellenbogen essentially said, "Oh my God, you punched a prison officer in the face. You poor thing. I didn't realise the extent of your anxiety and your depression and your traumatisation was as extensive as that. I just didn't if you punched a prison officer, you poor thing. So in that case, no more solitary confinement to you." What is happening in our judiciary? These people are crazy. This is an embarrassment. This is an embarrassment to British justice, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the key. This is, I mean, it's embarrassing talking about it and reading it. You just can't, you couldn't make it up. But it's just symptomatic. I mean, we've had Jeremy Corbyn writing this week, haven't we? Worried about the Palestine Action people who are behind bars at the moment, who are on hunger strike. And if they want to go on hunger strike, let them. They're terrorists. Who cares? I keep coming back to that central point. We've got to care about the victims, and we've got to punish the perpetrators. We've got it upside down in this country. We've had it upside down for such a long time, and it's doing us so much harm. And where does the money come from? I mean, already we're spending an extra, 15 billion on benefits. Where's it coming? Where are we paying for all of this stuff? And how are we paying for so many people behind? But it's just beggars belief. And is, as you say, Kev, it's the stupidity of the whole thing that is really worrying, because it's demented as much as anything.
And it's this will be a test case now. Any prisoner put into solitary confinement or put in one of these isolation units, if they feel like it, they're going to go to the court, go to the authorities, they're going to cite this precedent, and solitary confinement will be taken out of their range of punishments. They won't be able to be put into solitary confinement or indeed any kind of isolation. As I say, what on earth is going on in this country? This is deranged nonsense, isn't it?
Well, I mean, the problem is they're laughing at us. Okay, if you're a potential Islamist nutcase and you're seeing that you're going to get, the red carpet treatment when you go to prison, and the more you act up, the more you misbehave, the better treatment you get, then first of all, it's not going to act as a deterrent, okay? That's the worst thing. It's actually putting people in danger, isn't it? Because there is no deterrent. All right, you're going to be locked up, but you're going to have a jolly time. You're going to have a hell of a time, There is no deterrent, and they are laughing at us. They're laughing at the victims. They're laughing at the taxpayer. They're laughing at the country. All of it. It is so depressing, and we just need the whole system ripping up, starting again. And the one thing we really do need, and I'm sure viewers would agree with this, we need to get out of the ECHR straight, as soon as possible.
Yeah, this is more evidence. We've got to get out of that sclerotic, useless club. We get nothing out of membership of the ECHR except special treatment for Islamist extremists behind bars. Great, well worth joining anything that's going to provide those people with special circumstances. Unbelievable. Stephen, we need to talk about Rachel from Accounts, Rachel Reeves, Robber Reeves, Rachel Thieves, the dreadful Chancellor of the Exchequer, who ruined the economy last October with her budget from hell, £40 billion tax grab, the biggest tax grab in modern history, killing the economy stone dead, killing all chance of growth. And ever since we've been struggling, she's created such a massive black hole in our economy, in our finances, something like 50 billion quid, that she's got to fill it again with tomorrow's budget. Everyone giving her a hard time, saying, here's the thing, you're not very good, are you, Rachel? You're rubbish. You have ruined our economy. You're not up to the job. Why have we been doing that? Well, guess why, according to Rachel. It's because we're misogynists. We hate women. We've been picking on her because she's a woman. No, Rachel, we've been picking on you because you are spectacularly useless. It's nothing to do with her gender or sex, is it, Stephen?
No, of course it isn't. And we all know this. And I really think this is the year all of this nonsense dies, calling people racists in order to just dismiss their ideas, calling people sexist. It's not my fault that she's a woman and that she's incompetent. I'd like it if she was a woman and competent. And, you know, I mean, I shouldn't really pick her sex, I suppose, but, you know, what's the difference? And you've got on Talk, you've got Alex Phillips and Julia. So good luck for her tomorrow, trying to say that it's just the men who are criticising her, because I imagine they will open broadside.
Do you mean Alex Phillips and Julia Hartley-Brewer, who turn all of us men on Talk into second-class citizens? I'll tell you. But yeah, go on. Yeah,
it's just ridiculous, the amount of female commentators who are going to point out how crap she is tomorrow. It's, you know, it's absolutely clear. And personally, I think it's quite shocking that the Labour Party hasn't had a female leader yet. But I'm not somebody who plays these games, so I would never want a female leader just for the sake of it. I think this time around, because let's face it, she's going to car crash tomorrow, and then eventually he's going to fall. And then there's going to be a leadership challenge. And actually, what's interesting is that the only people I see with genuine talent in Labour are Shabana Mahmood and Angela Rayner. And I think it should be a contest between the two of them, not because they're women, but because I genuinely think that they're the only people of any talent in this government at all.
But, you know, including Angela Rayner? Yeah, definitely. Definitely talent.
I do, and I mean, she did a very interesting interview with Fraser Nelson a number of years ago in The Spectator, and I would urge people to read it. I think she's massively underrated. But I think she plays.
I think she's justifiably underrated, but we'll agree to differ on that.
we all agree to differ, but the idea that you and I just think Rachel's rubbish because
it's nothing to do with her, Jenny. It really isn't. She said, first of all, she said that leaks in the run-up to the budget had been, and I quote, incredibly destabilising. Here's an idea then, Rachel. Don't leak. You've been leaking it up. This is a ridiculous thing to say. Anyway, she went on to say in a defiant message to her Labour colleagues in the Commons that she had this sort of pre-budget meeting. She said, I'll show the media. She's like some kid, you know. I'll show the media. I'll show the Tories. I will not let them beat me. I'll be there on Wednesday. I'll be there next year. And I'll be back the year after that. And then she goes on to say, I don't think even I had recognised the misogyny that still exists in public life. Again, nothing to do with you being a woman, Rachel, but if I can just pick you up on this, I'll be here next year, I'll be here the year after that. No, you will not.
No, she won't. And, you know, this is just ridiculous because she promised last budget that she was doing tough things that were going to be painful, and they were painful, in order to heal everything. She has not healed anything. She has made it worse. We have fewer jobs. We have a terrible job market. Our prospects are appalling. Hospitality is in the absolute sewer. I mean, were we lucky to have a pub left in this country after tomorrow? You know, and the idea that she cannot face consequences because she is a woman is utterly ridiculous. She's around my age, which means she would have grown up with Margaret Thatcher as Prime Minister and Her Majesty the Queen as Head of State. Stop pretending that women can't succeed and that it's got anything to do with your sex. It's just embarrassing at this point,
It is embarrassing. I said this is exactly what I said earlier, or what I wrote earlier. You know, unlike Labour, the Tories do allow female leaders. 3 women have run this country. None of them ever played the sexism victim card. And Rachel Reeves doing that is even more pathetic than all the other blame shifting she's been doing. It's everyone else's fault apart from hers. And now it's also down to misogyny. Honestly, she's cutting a pretty tragic figure, isn't she?
But she's hurting real lives, Kev.
Yeah.
I mean, behind this, this sort of narcissistic, they only doing it because I'm a woman, poor me, I'm the victim. It's like, you're not the victim, Rachel. You have a job and you have a guaranteed pension and you're very wealthy. The victims are the people who do not have jobs anymore, who do not have savings, who might have to go on to benefit, whose lives are being destroyed because you cannot run an economy, because you simply refuse to accept basic economic principles that we cannot spend more than we earn.
Yeah.
That they simply refuse to accept this. They belittle it. They laugh at it. They come up with incredibly complicated, wordy nonsenses to prove why we can actually spend more than we earn, and we can't.
And they also believe,
and we're paying the price.
They also believe, Stephen, Rachel and her gang ludicrously believe that if you feed the public sector, if you turn the public sector into a bloated, over-financed blob, that is somehow good for the economy. It is the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot feed the parasite and expect to remain healthy.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, the public sector is a cost drag upon the economy. Now, I'm an utter softie, and I want the economy to be as big as it can be so that we can afford luxuries like raising children well, caring for vulnerable people, looking after the elderly. Oh, by the way, not murdering them just because it's cheaper, which is what Labour's planning to do. But that's what I'd like to do. But you just cannot put the cart before the horse. Ultimately, she's killing the private sector economy that pays for everything. Labour are the parasite that is killing their host. That is not sustainable.
It certainly isn't. Listen, I've got to go, Stephen, because I'm going to get a quick milkshake in before she taxes them tomorrow. Our man Peter Cardwell, talk presenter, is currently vacationing over in God's own country in America and is in Washington at the moment. Welcome to the show, Peter. Thank you very much for giving up some of your vacation, but dramatic and tragic events in the city that you're in right now. What's been going on?
Yes, really shocking. I mean, about 5 minutes walk from the White House, about 2.5 blocks away, a gunman opened fire on National Guard officers. And what has been happening in the last few months is that the National Guard was federalized by President Trump. There are lots more National Guardsmen in and around many cities, but particularly Washington, D.C. So this happened. I was actually speaking to an eyewitness who was bundled very dramatically into a nearby McDonald's, kept in there for about an hour. He told me that he heard the gunshots, heard certainly other eyewitnesses have talked about hearing initial shots, presumably the shooting of the National Guardsmen, both of whom have now died, and then a volley of shots back, presumably at the shooter, who is in hospital at the moment, but so far alive anyway. Lots of buildings, of course. Washington, D.C. is the national capital, the White House nearby, but lots of other parts of the government as well. The U.S. Treasury building, the airport here, Reagan National Airport, named after President Reagan. It's in lockdown at the moment. A lot of different areas covered by yellow tape, and certainly the law enforcement officials working together on this, because you've got District of Columbia, DC police working on this. You've got the National Guard investigating this, and the Secret Service as well, who are in charge of keeping the president safe. Well, he's not here in Washington. In fact, he's in Florida at Mar-a-Lago at his resort. He was playing golf at the time in West Palm Beach, and then stopped that and went back to Mar-a-Lago. He's been given an update by his Homeland Security Secretary, Kirsten Noem, who has been giving bits of information out as well. We know that one of the guardsmen was certainly shot in the head. They were both the guardsmen were taken to hospital. We were told they were in critical condition for some time, but now being told that they have died. They're from West Virginia, and the governor of that state, there were 8 states where the National Guard was nationalized and brought to DC. So West Virginia guardsmen in the American capital, and both of those men were from West Virginia, which is why the governor of West Virginia is putting that information in the public domain.
Patrick Morrissey. What time Washington time did this happen, as far as you're aware, Peter?
So I actually got information on this about an hour and a half ago, maybe slightly more than that, from the eyewitness that I've been speaking to. In fact, that person was in touch with me even before it hit Twitter and hit the American news network. So it was middle of the afternoon, broad daylight. It's a beautiful, clear day here in Washington. And that was just a really, really shocking event. It was near a metro station. Many of these National Guardsmen have been at metro stations. It was Farragut West Metro Station, which is one of the main metro stations in DC. Fewer people in DC just at the moment because it's Thanksgiving weekend. A lot of people will have left or will have been on their way home. Of course.
But out on the street, it just happened on the street, as far as you can, you know.
Yeah, just on the street, and there are at the moment quite a large area cordoned off. And as I said, the eyewitness I was speaking to kept in that McDonald's restaurant for about an hour or so, and just recently told that he was free to leave. And
we're talking about a shooter. Are the authorities? Are we sure it's a single shooter? Somebody acting alone?
That appears to be the case so far. We don't know what the motive is. We don't know if that person was acting alone. We don't know who that person is. We don't know why. And all of those bits of information will have to be pieced together. Now, President Trump, as you said, Kevin, has called the shooter an animal so far and said that the full force of the law will be brought down upon him or her. And it'll be interesting to see what happens next. A big investigation, of course, and everybody here in DC talking about it as the news filters through to people.
But as you say, no hint at all of a motive so far?
No issue, no possible. There's so many. To say anything would be speculation. Certainly, the National Guard is controversial. Sure. Yeah. It is that President Trump nationalised it about 5 months ago. There was a legal case recently, and he was told that he wasn't allowed to do that. And within 21 days, I think we're now on the 6th or 7th day, within 21 days that he would have to send those National Guardsmen back to their respective states. Now, he hasn't done that so far, and I believe the White House is appealing that. But certainly more law enforcement. I mean, there's obviously a lot of law enforcement in Washington, D.C. anyway. It is the national capital, but the National Guard was something new and was part of a number of sort of controversial policies of President Trump. Whether it's linked to that or not, we just don't know. It's just too early to say. Absolutely.
Just to explain to people, the National Guard are like reservists, like we used to call them the Territorial Army, so they're volunteers. But I think I'm right in saying, Peter, at the moment, many of them have been mobilised in cities all across the states, including Washington, as President Trump tries to clean up in a law and order sweep. Am I right?
That's absolutely right, Kevin. And certainly there are 8 different states' National Guardsmen are in Washington, D.C. at the moment, including West Virginia. So West Virginia is I mean, we're bordering Washington, D.C., of course, borders Virginia, so it's not that far from West Virginia, but they are a bit of a way from where their homes would be and where they would usually be expected to be. But because of this nationalisation, that's why they are in Washington at the moment. That's why there are many National Guardsmen in many cities around the United States, but certainly in D.C. as well. So, yeah, there's no further information really at the moment, but we do know that the West Virginia governor has confirmed that the 2 National Guardsmen who have died are from his state.
And a last question, really. I mean, this is Thanksgiving weekend. In America, folks, that's bigger than Christmas. This is the big holiday weekend. What's the mood? What's the atmosphere like in the capital city there?
Well, this is a very, very important weekend. As you say, it's bigger than Christmas, and the largest number of Americans who move at any part of the year will move today or yesterday or today. The children are off school at the moment. There are lots of people who will have the Thanksgiving weekend. We know Black Friday is this Friday with all the sales and everything. That's an American tradition. So a lot of people in transit at the moment, certainly those trying to get out of Washington, one of the main airports, Reagan National Airport, that is in lockdown at the moment. So certainly it's another shooting. It's in broad daylight. It's in the middle of the afternoon in a place where you could expect to be hopefully expect to be pretty safe, Washington, D.C. So there will be a lot of annoyance, panic, worry, certainly from many people, but it does seem in this case in as much as we know so far, Kevin, that the law enforcement authorities have got this under control. They appear to have got the perpetrator, or the alleged perpetrator. Certainly, we'll see if there's any more detail that comes out of this.
Brendan, yeah, you wrote a brilliant piece for Spiked Online today about Nigel Farage, bringing in an aspect. We're talking, of course, about this extremely mad, weird smear campaign going on about him at the moment by The Guardian and the BBC, that when he was 13 years old, he might have said some anti-Semitic nasty things about Jews in the school playground when he was 13 years old, which I've just been dismissing as absolutely absurd. It's just absurd. How can you condemn someone for something they said when they were a child 50 years ago, 49 years ago, nearly half a century? But you brought out a really good point. What it amounts to is adults bullying a child. That child being the 13-year-old Nigel Farage. It's kind of Orwellian. They're bullying this kid to say, you shouldn't have said that. We've got the Prime Minister saying he needs to explain this. Look, when you were 13, when I was 13, I was a different person. You can't blame me for something I did when I was 13 or 3 or 5 or even 15. But this is sinister. Adults attacking a 13-year-old boy.
It's horrendous. I really cannot believe people are taking this controversy seriously. I mean, I can understand why The Guardian is pushing it and now the BBC is pursuing it as well, because they hate Nigel Farage and they're scared of the millions of working class people who intend to vote for him. That's what they're panicking about. That's why they're doing this. But I still am in a state of shock that anyone else is treating this so-called scandal seriously, because as you say, we're talking about someone who was a teenager. You know, halfway through The Guardian's so-called expose, it has this line which says something like, Farage was 13 or 14 at the time. Was he too young to know any better? And you want to just say, yes. He was a child. Anyone who's ever met a 13-year-old boy will know that they are not very mature. Some of them are socially awkward and shy. Others are nasty little runts, and they say stupid things, as is in their nature to say stupid things. We all did that when we were 13. And if you or I or anyone else were to be taken to task for things we said when we were 13 years old, God help us, we'd be finished. I really think that there's something deeply sinister about this scandal, and there's also something deeply hypocritical about it as well. We've just heard that the BBC has spread so many vicious lies about the Jewish state that it had to issue 2 apologies a week on average since 7th of October 2023. And now it thinks it can take a break from that kind of horrible Israelophobia to moan about something supposedly anti-Semitic that Nigel Farage said when Elvis Presley was still alive in early 1977. Are they for real? Do these people think we're stupid? And you look at The Guardian as well. The Guardian has contributed, I think, to the culture of anti-Semitism we have in this country, with its relentless demonization of the Jewish homeland and its relentless demonization of Zionism. It's contributed to one of the worst crises of anti-Semitism we've seen in years. And now it thinks it can point a finger at a 13-year-old boy who might or might not have said something in the playground in 1977. It's a sick joke, and no one should take this seriously at all.
Exactly right. I said in my monologue earlier that if there's one good thing about it, at least the BBC and The Guardian have finally seemed to have realised that anti-Semitism might not be a very nice thing, might be a bad thing. That's a wake-up call for them. But extraordinary the way they're doing this. And as you say also in your article, I think it is a sign of the desperation that our left-leaning establishment is feeling about the threat from reform. Their advance is still inexorable. I don't think this is going to remotely stop the advance and the rise of reform, because I think everybody, I know, I'm looking at my switchboard, the calls I've been taking on this, people are going, this is absurd. If anything, I think it will be good for Nigel Farage, because people are thinking, poor guy. Poor guy. Why is he getting picked on for something he, as you say, may or may not have said when he was in class 3R at Dulwich College, private school in South London? Now, this Jewish filmmaker, a guy called Peter Etouji, he turned up saying, I remember it very well, and he's not being straight about this. Now, I don't want to impugn Mr. Etouji at all, but, you know, filmmakers, BAFTA-winning filmmakers, I bet he didn't vote Brexit. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. And, you know, Kevin, you will remember this. When we were kids, there was racism at school. And no, I don't think anyone would deny that. And one of the points I make in my piece is there were even racist terms on Grange Hill right through to the 1980s. I remember it. And there are clips on the internet that younger people than us often share. And they say, hold on, this was on BBC TV at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. They can't believe it. Yeah. So it's true. And I heard racist things at school. The other point I make in that piece is that if you wanted me to, I could name 10 people from my school who said openly racist things. But I'm not going to do that because they were kids. And it was 100 years ago. And they've all matured to be decent blokes who have good families and good jobs. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be cruel and vindictive like The Guardian and the BBC and harangue, in this case, a 61-year-old man over something he might or might not have said 50 years ago. That's really genuinely repulsive. But as you say, what's driving this is their absolute sense of fear and panic, because these people know that their days are numbered. Their days when they could wag a finger and dictate the culture and dictate the political agenda and tell us, the people, what to think. Those days are numbered because populism is on the march once again. And loads of people, especially in former Labour voting working class communities, are planning to vote for Nigel Farage's Reform UK. And that has put the wind up the Guardian, has put the wind up the BBC, and they will do anything to stop Farage. They will throw any dirt at him at all in the hope that it sticks. So the only thing this has exposed is not Farage himself, but the absolute desperation and rank panic amongst the establishment, because they know that ordinary people are sick and tired of them.
Yeah, and these are filthy low-down tactics. They really, really are. Just before you go, Brendan, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. So that's it then. Trial by jury, nice while it lasted, but it's over now. At the stroke of a pen, our Justice Secretary David Lammy, also the Deputy Prime Minister, said, well, you know, we'll keep it for a few very serious crimes, you know, rape and murder, manslaughter. But apart from that, no more jury trials. That is so bad, that is so egregious that I found myself on Twitter today. I said, I will only say this once, listen very carefully, but I agree with Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn was voicing just what a horror this was, what a terrible affront this will be to our democratic free society based on justice of our peers. This is a really, really frightening, and the stroke of a pen, that's it.
When I first heard about this, I refused to believe it. I don't have any faith whatsoever in this government, and certainly not in David Lammy, but I still couldn't believe that they would be considering something like this. It's genuinely shocking and deeply, deeply disturbing. Trial by jury is one of the most essential liberties in a civilized society. And it's one of those liberties that Britain did so much to develop over the centuries, from the Magna Carta onwards. We played a huge role in ensuring that the modern world had this wonderful thing called trial by jury. And it's the most democratic form of deciding someone's guilt. You know, that's precisely why people in power don't like trial by jury, because it gives power to ordinary people, 12 ordinary men and women who get to listen to a case, use their moral and mental faculties and decide for themselves, amongst themselves, if this person is guilty or not. It brings the people into the judicial system. For this government to even think about forcing the people back out and leaving everything to one judge, that shows just how tyrannical and authoritarian this government is. My point is this: even if this doesn't come to pass, even if it gets rejected, even if everyone says, look, you can't do this, and the government backs down, we should never forget that they wanted to do it. That is a black mark against the Labour Party for the rest of time, as far as I'm concerned.
We're going to play some of the footage as we speak, but you saw what was going on. Yes, a very blatant, you know, every farmer that got arrested seemed to be rather theatrically, filmically put into handcuffs. Now, as I understand it, it looks to me as if that was against police rules, because the police accept that the use of handcuffs is a use of force, and the police are only allowed to use force if they suspect there's a threat to public danger, if they suspect the suspect is violent, is being violent or could be violent, or is liable to escape. These farmers were none of those things, so why were they being handcuffed, do you think?
Well, I think it's come to the point where the procedure is the punishment, in a sense. And I was always proud to be a British Bobby, a Scotland Yard detective, because we're different from the American police, aren't we? Who handcuff everybody who are armed. The British police were seen as a model for the world, that we were just and fair. And the rules are quite clear. You handcuff somebody if they're likely to be violent or hide evidence or hurt somebody or whatever else. And none of these criteria seem to have been met. And it just gives an awful view to the public. And what it shows people is there's two-tier policing. I think Jacob Rees-Mogg was saying what they should have said. It was tractors for Palestine, because if it was tractors for Palestine, then they wouldn't have been handcuffed, would they? But we see how football fans are treated against Black Lives Matter, and the farmers are seen as easy game, because they're part of what Tony Blair described as, I suppose, of the forces of conservatism, and so they need to be dealt with. But it just sends the wrong message. British policing should be better than this, and it's gone down the pan, and it's really awful to see. I feel ashamed, really. It should be so much better.
So if you were a serving copper yesterday, in your mind, as an experienced police officer, there is no way that those farmers should have been handcuffed.
No way. No, they should have been. They should never. I made my career really on getting information out of people. I got information out of people because I was reasonable. I was nice with people. Even the most wicked criminals I'd be nice with, because I give them the opportunity to tell me information so I could catch some more wicked criminals. And you do this by being reasonable. Some people I would fight. I played for the Met Police Rugby League team, so I was prepared to fight with anybody if need be. But you don't need to do that on most occasions. You need to be reasonable with people. The farmers were there with a legitimate protest. Yes, they've breached some rule or other, but British policing is better than this. We're not the Spanish or the German police who wade in there, or we didn't used to be, wade in there with batons. There's no excuse for this whatsoever. It's a breach of policy, and the officers who did that and the supervisors who authorised it should be held to account.
And in effect, it seems to me, cynics might say that the police there, because the government sought to ban this protest, they didn't like the look of that. They didn't want tractors going round Parliament Square on budget day. So the farmers were officially banned, but they ignored that ban. So the police, in effect, look like agents of the government here. They're doing the government's work. That's not what coppers are supposed to do, is it?
No, they're supposed to be independent of politics. But we saw all those people, whether we agree or disagree with the Palestine Action thing, the government decide that they're going to be they're sorted out, so they're quickly shifted along. But and arrested. But we saw all the time, we see two-tier policing. We see how Extinction Rebellion are dealt with, how Black Lives Matter are dealt with, and then we see how the farmers are dealt with and how football fans are dealt with. Or if you're a supporter of the Unite the Country or the Tommy Robinson March or whatever. And the police should be above this. They're not agents of the state. They're independent, and they should enforce the law fairly and impartially. And too often, I think the public are just shocked by how the police have been politicised in the last 20 years, particularly since Blair, that they become, we had the Ian Blair, the Commissioner of Police, with a Labour supporting car. It's just not the way it should be.
I assume these arrests, we're going to listen to one of the farmers who did get their collar felt yesterday in just a second, but I assume that the reason for these arrests was, while in effect the protest itself was not banned. What the Met Police did was ban agricultural vehicles, aka tractors, but the farmers ignored that. So I'm assuming that the sort of febrile atmosphere was because the farmers brought their tractors in anyway, and the cops are going, well, you're breaching the tractor ban. I assume that's what it's all about. Let's have a quick listen to a farmer who was arrested in Trafalgar Square yesterday.
For Section 14, we see farmers being arrested just by Trafalgar Square. It's absolutely outrageous. This is the place of the public and farmers being arrested on the Section 14 dispersal because the police the day before decide to say that they're not going to be allowed to protest.
I've asked you several times to follow the conditions.
Get up to my tractor to get the key out of it. We wanted you to protest safely, but you're not following the instructions. I was getting the key out of my tractor. I was getting the key out of my pocket.
Tractor. Why is he being arrested?
Tractor to move it as you asked.
Okay? Because you're obstructing the highway.
Well, I'm not sure you're going to be able to move the tractors then, are you?
Yeah, don't worry. Stop your store. We'll sort that out.
It's not a competition. You don't need to be angry. God, he's got such attitude.
Farmers being arrested on the roundabout, Trafalgar Square, place of the public. That is a superior officer on the phone.
This is another police officer saying this is wrong. She's asking to speak to me. Not on the phone, asking to speak to me.
Well, unsurprisingly, that clip, that was the voice of Alan Miller there, by the way, from the Together organisation, Freedom Campaigners. He's narrating it, but you saw the copper saying, look, or rather the farmer, he's just trying to get the key out of his tractor. And as I said, the bone of contention, Mike, seems to be, oh, you shouldn't have brought your tractors here, so that's why we're arresting you. Well, that footage has had more than 1 million views. I think people didn't like what they saw there. I mean, that guy getting handcuffed there, that looked to me as if that was a little bit of theatre, didn't it, you?
They look like scruffy bullies to me. That's what they look like. And it's just a bad image. And as I say, British policing was the envy of the world. Smart officers, decent, fair. And now we see, you know, this sort of nonsense going on. You know, the man could just move. He could have just got him to move his tractor, move along, and all would have been sorted out. But no, you're right. It's a bit of theatre. Do what the politicians say. It's just, I don't know. It's just shameful to see that people have a legitimate right to protest. We've earned that right through wars and death and blood of this country, and now we see if the protest doesn't fit the agenda of the progressive left, then the people must be dealt with and arrested and have their hands put up their back. There's absolutely no need for that whatsoever.
Exactly right. I'm just looking at more pictures. So it just seems to me that these farmers, they should be shown more respect by the public, by the government, by the police. I mean, they've got a fair point. You might think it's fantastic to tax these poor people to the hilt as they try and pass their farms on from generation to generation. But whether or not you agree with that, I think they've got a perfectly fair reason to protest. And this looked to me like the police joining forces with the government to put their dirty great cop boots on the right to protest. That's not right.
And most of those farmers as well, this will be the first protest they've ever been on. My experience as being a young police officer in London, it was always like save the whale, ban the bomb, stop the war, and it was the same characters in socks and sandals with ponytails every week, drifting along, doing the same old protest. It was a day out for these people, and they were treated nicely and with respect. These farmers are hard-working men and women who just want to make their point. They don't cause much trouble. Most of their time is spent working hard, 12, 13, 14 hours on a farm every day. They come to London to protest and they're treated in this brutal and unnecessary manner. It is just not good enough.
And we're also hearing stories that those that did get arrested, we're not sure of the numbers yet, but were basically taken to the cop shop, but nothing happened to them. You know, they took the handcuffs off. They weren't charged or anything, and then they left. So once again, that proves, I'm sure they were put on some kind of warning, you know, probably, you know, you are now being investigated for this. But in essence, nothing happened to them. So once again, it proves that what we're looking at here is deliberate theatre. Show everybody that if they break these rules, we'll handcuff them, we'll strong-arm them in the street. That's what this is about, I would suspect.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said at the start, the process is the punishment. These farmers will probably never end up at court. You know, they'll never be charged. They won't end up at court and being fined. But the punishment is having your arms put up your back, dragged away. How are you going to get your tractor back? That tractor is used on the farm, you know, needed there. So that'll be impounded and they'll have to pay to get it back. And then they'll be put on bail possibly and have to be, you know, come back to London whenever the police dictate, when they should be on the farm. And that'll cost them money as well. So they will be punished by the process rather than the courts.
About the Easter Island statues. Let's talk to our favourite historian, ancient and modern historian, Ashley Hearn. Welcome back to the show, Ashley.
Very good to see you again, Kevin.
Always a pleasure. And I want to pick your brains about this. There's a story going around in the papers today that the mystery of the Easter Island statues has been solved. And all it actually said was that it looks as if each statue was carved by different groups of people. So they had their own styles, probably hacked the stone out of different bits of the quarry rock and all that. There they are, of course, if you're looking on YouTube, which I didn't think was a sort of massive development. But I was reading through the story, and this is what really intrigued me. So these were all carved, they think, about 900 years ago. They still don't quite know what they were for. There are stories that originally they had corals for eyes. They don't, I believe, as some people say, stare out to sea. They stare inland, which is even more interesting. People still aren't quite sure what they were for, but they believe they were something to do with rituals. Now, they're massive. How did they move them? People have come up with a theory about that you can sort of rocking them from side to side, you can kind of rock them forwards. So all of that, how do you say it? They're called moais, is it? Moais. Okay, so they were essentially created 900 years ago. That island is packed with them. People go there specifically to see them. I've always wanted to go myself. Now, when Dutch seafarers arrived on Rapa Nui, as it is called by the locals, Easter Island, in 1722, the monuments were all still in good shape. They were being used by the locals as for rituals in a society that seemed to be in fine order. Peace and harmony reigned. That was 1722. In 1774, so something like 50 years later, half a century later, British explorer James Cook, Captain Cook, he arrived there, and the British crew described an island in crisis with many of the monuments overturned and damaged, the society unravelling. So my question to you is, do you have any idea what happened in those 50 years to upend 900 years of peace and harmony and to actually destroy and damage so many of these wonderful monuments? Do you have any idea what might have happened?
I mean, there's a range of theories. One of the problems, of course, as always, is the extent to which the sort of eyewitness accounts are really reflective of they're just sort of popping by. This isn't a sort of modern, careful anthropological study. I mean, one of the problems could be that the visitors saw all these enormous stone statues, and quite sort of sensibly, thinking back to the sort of awareness of large stone structures back in Europe, they assume, well, the civilization that put these original stone heads up, they were clearly quite advanced, and yet the people they came to sort of see were living in these relatively small groups, living a sort of fairly basic lifestyle. Their sort of view would be, well, how have they got from building all these massive stones of statues of people to the way they live now? So there was that sense to which, the sort of, when Cook and his expedition turn up, you have this sense of, well, there's clearly a decline. Something has sort of gone wrong. I mean, there certainly seems to have been a problem caused by contact with Europeans, as again, looking at the period of history when Europeans begin to explore the whole of the world is now coming into contact with sort of with Europe and its civilization. So some people have suggested that disease, and certainly later in the late 19th century, one of the big problems is the Peruvians enslave about a third of the Rapa Nui Islanders in the 1860s. Most of them don't come back. That also sees an introduction of smallpox as well, which causes all sorts of problems. So there's various theories. One of the theories is that because they chopped all the trees down to help move the moai about, this led to this sort of a destruction of the island. It's the so-called ecocide theory. And then obviously once the last tree was cut down, they weren't able to go out in canoes anymore. They had to find new ways of survival. All the animals died. Some people suggested that rats came in and ate all the trees. So there's a range of possible theories about why there seems to have been so much sort of tumult in these islands. My sense is it's contact with the outside world and with Europeans, which sets off a change, a series of changes within the islands, some of which are pretty sort of negative, introduction of disease, but also once they came into contact with Europeans. Well, we know, for example, that one of the moai has a European ship drawn on it, which implies that actually contact with Europeans was something seen as a positive by the islanders, and they wanted them to come back. So it clearly led to a sort of quite rapid change in their social structure, and any rapid change in social structure can have quite negative consequences. So it's probably to do with contact with Europeans, like much, say, when the Spanish go to Mesoamerica. Obviously, there's lots of change there as well.
Now, Easter Island is impossibly remote. It is a speck of land. I think
it's crazy. It's like 3,700 kilometres from South America, 1,900 kilometres from the next inhabited island.
Yeah, 3,700 kilometres from to the west of South America. If you look at them, it's just, I mean, to say it's more than in the middle of nowhere. I mean,
it's incredibly remote.
It's nowhere.
Yeah.
So tell us about the Rapa Nui people then. They developed in this sort of isolated environment, I assume.
So they're part of this broader movement of what we call the Polynesian settlement, which takes place in the sort of first couple of millennia. These people originally come from Taiwan, and they spread through all the islands of the Pacific, undergoing these remarkable journeys where they navigate on their canoes all over the direction. I mean, some people have suggested that the Polynesians go even further east, past Rapa Nui, to South America itself. So it's quite remarkable. I mean, again, they're in such an isolated area. People used to think they arrived about 900 AD. The latest archaeology and genetic scholarship suggests a slightly later date. The suggestion is they start building these statues about 1200 AD. I mean, again, normally when you see these big monumental efforts, enormous construction of stone, the usual theory is there's some chief or some governmental structure which is ordering people to do this and organising them. But most archaeologists, and again, that's what the article that's based on these news stories are based on, is basically arguing, is that actually they were operating these small little groups, these little tribal groups of several dozen, 100, 120 people perhaps, and they were building these statues separately for their different sort of family group, and they were being put up almost in competition with each other. And it's quite remarkable.
Hence the vast number of them. There's hundreds of them, aren't there?
I mean, and it's remarkable, really. I mean, again, this idea that sort of keeping up with the Joneses next door, they put a big moai up, we need to do the same. I mean, this idea of moving, there used to be a theory that they were used with trees, and that's where all the trees went. But again, the suggestion, and the archaeologists have been working, this has been around for quite a few decades. As you said, there's nothing particularly new here. This has all been suggested before, which is essentially you only need a small number of people moving it. You might have seen the video.
Yeah, if you see
about 20 of them.
sort of there's a forward angle.
Yeah.
And they're carved so that you could they sort of rock them forward.
You can walk them forward.
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, you only need a small group. I mean, basically, archaeologists, this whole report is to say that when they looked with this remarkable drone technology and flying over, taking all these photos, I mean, if you look at the map, with these sort of 3D images, it's quite remarkable. You can zoom in to see all these sort of carved statues which have been half finished in the volcano sort of quarry based on this old volcano. But then they sort of walk them down in these small groups.
So yeah, as you say, you can see them half carved out of the rocks in this sort of vast quarry valley. So suddenly the Rapa Nui people, it seems, stopped making these statues.
Yeah. I mean, some people suggested, again, this partly depends on this idea that they suddenly stopped it. It was a collapse. And again, this ties into the idea, which was popularised by a popular writer called Jared Diamond, who wrote a book in the 2000s, arguing it wasn't a news story, but he popularised the idea that the Rapa Nui people it was like this ecocide. It became an environmental parable for human societies, exhausting all their resources by carrying out what was essentially a futile cultural activity and showing the selfishness. And this was extrapolated to a sort of story for how we should all treat the planet. But archaeologists have been much more sceptical about this story more recently. And the idea that they suddenly sort of stopped doing it, there seemed to be a moment of where they were all doing it. You have like 30 different areas, these different clan groups. That's the archaeologist's view. They're all sort of competing with each other to build their own style. But then the practice continues, but in a much smaller scale. It gradually declines. Then, of course, there's another practice which emerged, the famous Birdman ceremony, which evolves in one other part of the island slightly later, where all the groups all compete by having their young men to swim across to an island and getting the first tern's egg. If you go to the British Museum, they have a moai there.
I know they do, rather controversially, I do believe.
Yeah. But on the back, they've got an image of the Birdman Festival, which sort of seems to have replaced the moai as a ceremony.
So there's an island just off the coast of Easter Island.
Yeah, exactly. And they used to swim across. It's pretty vicious because, I mean, all the rocks are very sharp and you're swimming across this shark-infested channel. It was the way the first person to do it would then be the Birdman, and you'd be able to share resources and dominate the resources. So it's interesting to see how their society changed.
Yeah.
Certainly.
There's almost 1,000 of these statues around the island. Yeah. Some of them in a good state of repair. Others have been toppled. Others are damaged. At first, everybody thought they were exactly the same, but they're not. Each one is different. Some of them are feminine. Some of them are obviously of women.
All look different. Yeah.
So I was just laughing. I was just thinking, so why did they suddenly stop doing it? Just in the quarry saying, why do we do sod this, you know?
Yeah.
But seriously, what were they for?
Well, we think they were basically again, it's the old archaeologist cop-out. If you don't know what it's for, say it's for religious reasons and say it's for ritual. But I mean, the Polynesian culture more broadly, it did sort of tend to use statues to represent chiefs. So some sort of powerful person within the clan. Another way is it represented ancestors. Like many societies, they sort of worshipped ancestors to sort of allow society to sort of keep going, to keep benevolent conditions going. So it was undoubtedly tied to some sort of ritual belief in either ancestors or a way of commemorating their rulers in the past. But again, the archaeologist's suggestion is going against this view that it's one big sort of state which has become too big with a big population, and arguing very strongly it's small little groups doing all of this.
Well, the takeaway is that this remains, in my view, just one of the great intriguing stories of history, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's, again, a small, in the middle of nowhere. First of all, how did they get there? I mean, it's a remarkable story, which we don't really properly appreciate. These remarkable Polynesian voyages with no compasses, basically just going off with a mixture of, I don't know, optimism and a sense of journeys that have been done before. But then again, how relatively small groups of humans can sort of end up creating quite sort of remarkable achievements in terms of their cultural construction and the cooperation to construct these remarkable sort of stone entities. I mean, we don't know how many people constructed Stonehenge, of course. We assume it's large numbers of people, but the Rapa Nui says, well, perhaps relatively small groups of people can achieve quite remarkable things when they work together. So there we go.
Extraordinary story. I love having you on the show, Ashley. Thank you so much. Brilliant.
Great to speak to you, Kevin.
Ashley Hearn there, Ancient and Modern History. I love that story, don't you? I mean, I love historical mysteries.